The crowd's laughter echoed as Malik stood frozen, his school uniform stained with the same mud they had thrown at him. Cameras were out, recording, mocking, spreading his humiliation in real time. He looked around for a teacher, a friend, anyone, but the world seemed to shrink, leaving him alone under a sky that suddenly felt too heavy. What started as a harmless prank had just turned into something far darker. And by sunset, this small act of cruelty would ignite a storm that no one saw coming. Malik had always believed that if he worked hard enough, people would see beyond the color of his skin. His mother told him education was the great equalizer, the bridge to a life free from the shadows his family had known. So every morning he walked through the iron gates of Oak Ridge High with his head held high, pretending not to hear the whispers that followed him down the hall. It wasn't that Oak Ridge was a bad school, it was that it was blind. Blind to the jokes whispered behind locker doors, the teachers who ignored raised hands, and the cafeteria tables that silently divided students into invisible lines of color. Malik had learned to live between those lines, quiet and careful, hoping one day his kindness would earn him belonging. But belonging, he would soon realize, was a luxury not offered to everyone. It started with a small thing, a misplaced book that someone claimed he stole, a rumor that spread faster than truth ever could. The laughter from the hallway that day wasn't new. What was new was how public it had become, how the line between cruelty and entertainment vanished once the camera lights turned on. 238. The video of Malik's humiliation spread faster than wildfire. Within hours it had been shared across group chats, whispered about in classrooms and laughed over in the school cafeteria. By morning, Malik wasn't just a student anymore, he was a meme. His face, his pain, his dignity, all captured in 10 seconds of entertainment. He stopped checking his phone. Every notification felt like a punch, every message a reminder that his worth had become a joke. His mother noticed the silence in him. She asked what was wrong, but how could he tell her that the world her sacrifices built had already decided who he was? He smiled instead, the kind of smile that hurts more than tears. At school, whispers turned to stares, and stares turned to avoidance. Teachers who once praised his essays now avoided his eyes. Even the few friends he thought he had drifted away, afraid to be seen defending him. Malik began eating lunch in the library, where the walls at least didn't laugh. But even there, the echoes of his video haunted him, playing in his mind like an unending loop. One afternoon, a paper appeared on his locker. No name, no handwriting he recognized. Just a message in bold black ink. Stay in your place. He stood there staring, frozen, as students passed by pretending not to notice. That was the day something inside him cracked. Not from fear, but from the unbearable weight of silence. He started keeping notes, writing down every incident, every slur muttered under breath, every teacher who turned away, every student who laughed a little too loudly when he walked by. It was his way of holding on to truth in a world determined to erase it. Then came the assembly. The principal stood on stage, lecturing about respect and equality, while Malik sat in the back, the subject of a lesson no one was willing to name. Cameras flashed again, only this time he didn't flinch. Somewhere deep down, a quiet resolve was forming. The day of the protest began like any other. Gray skies, tired faces, and the same uneasy silence that had followed Malik for weeks. But beneath that quiet surface, something had shifted. Overnight, a message had spread across social media. We stand with Malik. It wasn't from him, but from a small group of students who had seen enough. They didn't know the full story, but they knew what injustice looked like when it stood right in front of them. By noon, a crowd had gathered outside Oak Ridge High. Signs lifted into the air. Stop the silence, end the hate, no more lines. For the first time, Malik wasn't invisible. But standing in that crowd, he didn't feel pride, he felt fear. The same teachers who ignored him now watched from the windows, their expressions unreadable. The principal ordered everyone back to class, threatening suspension. Yet the students didn't move. The air was thick, pulsing with something raw and unstoppable. Malik had brought the journal he'd been keeping, the pages filled with every moment he'd endured in silence. His hands trembled as he stepped forward. Reporters had shown up by then, cameras ready, searching for the face at the center of it all. And though every instinct told him to disappear, Malik knew this was his moment. The point where pain could either crush him or transform him. He climbed the front steps of the school. The crowd fell silent. The only sound was the rustle of paper as he opened his notebook. His voice wavered at first, small and uncertain, but it grew stronger with every word. He read not just his story, but the story of every student who had ever been silenced, mocked, or pushed aside for being different. The assembly of faces blurred into one, a sea of emotion, anger, shame, empathy. As his words echoed, the same teacher who once watched him suffer stepped forward, her eyes filled with regret. "I'm sorry," she whispered, barely audible over the crowd, but Malik heard it. For the first time, an adult had said something that wasn't silence. Police sirens wailed in the distance as administrators tried to disperse the protest, but it was too late. The truth had already escaped the walls of Oak Ridge. Videos of Malik's speech spread online, shared not as mockery this time, but as defiance. When he finished reading, the sky finally broke open with rain. Students stayed where they were, drenched but unyielding, as if the storm itself had come to wash the hate away. Malik stood there, soaked and trembling, feeling lighter than he had in months. For once, he wasn't running from the noise. He was the noise. Janba. The following week, the laughter at Oak Ridge grew quieter. The whispers that once followed Malik down the hall were replaced by silence, uneasy, but necessary. The school board launched an investigation, teachers were questioned, and policies that had been ignored for years were suddenly rewritten. But Malik didn't care about revenge or apologies. What he wanted was something far greater, change. He kept attending classes, head high, the same boy but no longer the same spirit. The pain hadn't vanished, but it had shaped him into something unbreakable. For every cruel word, he had found a louder truth. For every moment of silence, he had discovered his own voice. Months later, a mural appeared on the school wall, painted by students, not staff. It showed Malik standing beneath the rain, books in hand, his eyes turned toward the sky. At the bottom, in bold letters, were the words, "We speak so no one stands alone." The world didn't change overnight, but one boy's courage had started a conversation no one could ignore. And maybe that's how change truly begins, not with power, not with anger, but with the strength to stand alone until others find the courage to stand beside you.